Welcome to Get Motivated with Donato Parisi, a show designed to reach you where you are, focusing on the fact that you can be anything you want and desire. All you have to do is get motivated. If you need a challenge in your life, then look no further. Get Motivated with Donato begins now.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Get Motivated here with me, your host Donato, and once again we have Jodie with us. If you haven't seen her before, I would actually encourage you to go back and watch some of our interviews because we're going to just kind of keep it more casual here today because we know each other so well. We've been in some books together and different things like that, and we're just going to let it flow, see how it goes, but welcome, Jodie.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be back and to see you again. And yes, casual is great. Like you said, we've had some wonderful conversations in the past. So I'm looking forward to this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure. And, why don't you, just in case somebody hasn't heard you from one of our past sessions, introduce yourself just a little bit so they know who you are, because there's just so much to who you are. I mean, we were talking even before the recording here on all of the various things that you do. So just give a little heads up of what you do.
All right, I will absolutely do that. So my name, like you said, is Jodie Solberg, and I am a mental wellness professional. I'm a licensed and certified master hypnotherapist. I've also been a success coach for many, many years, and I really help guide passionate, purpose-driven professionals to be able to heal from things like trauma, anxiety, burnout. That's a big one right nowadays. And I help them to figure out what is getting in their way, mentally, emotionally. A lot of times we have blocks, things that come up that we have to deal with and figure out where that root cause is coming from, or we keep dealing with them over and over again. And they keep us from reaching our goals, personal or professional. And so I help people to create more of that peace and joy and work-life harmony, and to be able to reach their goals with more clarity, calm, and confidence. And so that's a little bit about me and what I do. I have been a therapist and a coach for well over 20 years now. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I made the decision that I wanted to put my two worlds together, because I was working with a lot of people around, like I'd mentioned, things like trauma and abuse, anxiety, addictions on the therapy side. And I was working with a lot of entrepreneurs on the business side and helping them to build and grow their businesses. But what I found is my business clients had a lot of the same challenges. Of course, we're whole people. So everything affects us personally, affects us professionally, and vice versa. So they were having some of those same challenges as my therapy clients, but I wasn't their therapist. And so I wasn't able to help with some of those deeper issues. I was actually talking to a coach the other day for growth. So she's a growth and productivity specialist. So all about growing and scaling businesses. And she said that, what I do is so needed with putting those two things together and being able to help people who are trying to run businesses or be successful in their careers deal with some of their personal challenges as well. Because what she saw as a growth strategist was that 95% of people's issues weren't actually business problems. They were personal problems disguised as business problems. And so, so I put those worlds together, and that's where Psyched Up Success was born.
Awesome. So you said a few things there that I actually want to unpack a little bit. And you forgot, though, that you're a best-selling author. I want to make sure.
Yes. Well, you mentioned the books that we're in together. So
right.
You did that, but yes, absolutely. I have 2 of my own journals, as well as now we're going on my 7th book that I have co-authored. And yes, best-selling author and speaker, which were things that honestly I never would have imagined, at the beginning of my career that would have been the case. I was somebody who had to overcome fears of my own. We all do, right? We all have a journey. And so I had to overcome fears of public speaking and being on camera and doing things like that. And I don't think anybody now would realize how far that I've come, because they only really see the end result, right? You don't get to see all the work in between. But yes, that is something that I'm very proud of. And I love being able to share not only my stories, such as that one, but also to be able to share a lot of what I do with my clients with people through writing. So being able to have that wider reach is really important so that everybody can find that information to be accessible to them on how they can overcome some of their challenges or deal with things that maybe I've gone through or I've worked with other people who've gone through in the past.
Yeah, and you touched on fear a little bit, right? I mean, that's something that's so huge. And I think like we can either overlook it, misdiagnose it, or whatever, because
Mm-hmm.
we think, or maybe it's just me. I think fear. Oh, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm a big, strong guy, or whatever else, right? But it's like, oh, like how am I going to pay the bills? That's fear. How am
Mm-hmm.
I going to do this, or what's going to happen if this happens? And all of those little things are fear.
Yeah.
And we can't live that way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's a lot of what you're dealing with your clients. And I like you've got it behind you, but I got it right here too. Everything happens for a lesson. It's a
Mm-hmm.
cute little uh, title there. I like that because we need to learn not just from our fear, but all of those different things, right? And I,
Mm-hmm.
I think this journal in particular really helps with that, and your other one that's back there, and all of the different writings that you have. I don't know if you want to touch on that real quick before I get too far into some other things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. We can learn so much from those challenges that we have. And so when I put together the Everything Happens for a Lesson journal, that was a big part of it is how do you learn from the things that happen so you can grow from them and use those lessons moving forward and use it with fear. It can be disguised in a lot of different ways. So it can come up, you said, as pressure or as anxiety or just that little nagging voice in the back of your head. And a lot of times our subconscious is trying to protect us, right, with our fears or limiting beliefs or things that come up and just keep popping up in our mind. We keep dealing with them over and over again. And it's because of maybe something that happened in our past or, something that we saw growing up or something that we're worried about happening in the future. Those things that, like you said, maybe like paying the bills. And so some of those money mindset challenges, they can hold us back, but we're trying to stay in our comfort zone and we're afraid to go out. And so one of the things that I talk about a lot was looking for those lessons and also how to expand your comfort zone versus jumping out. And so that's something that I know I had to do. And the book that's actually behind you, The Greatness in You, that we were in
Mhm.
together as well, I talk about that public speaking journey for myself. That's one of the things I write about in there and how it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't that, okay, my comfort zone was 1-to-1, and then all of a sudden I'm speaking in front of 50,000 people. That wasn't
Right.
how that worked. When you're overcoming fears, it's really important to stair step your way up, to really just begin to expand. So I think of it as a target. You have a bullseye in the middle, and that's your comfort zone. But the rings around it aren't outside your comfort zone. Those are your stretching
Mhm.
spaces. So that's your
Right.
learning zone and your growth
Like
zone.
that.
So outside your comfort zone is completely off of the target. And so the way I teach is, let's just expand that a little bit so you can get more comfortable with the what ifs and some of those things that you're worried about. Let's work through those because we all have them and they may be rational, they may be irrational, but it's just our mind's way of trying to cope with some of those pressures or expectations or disappointments that we've had in the past. And so when you can learn from all of those things, not necessarily all just the positive things, but the negative things too, when you can pinpoint what those lessons are and then take that moving forward, you're able to grow, you're able to expand, and you can expand your capacity for being able to handle all the things that come your way.
So that's probably where your second behind you there journal comes in, right?
Yes, yes. So Embracing Our Strengths is the latest journal that I have released, and it is all about getting rid of the comparisons and really embracing who you truly are and figuring out what your strengths are. So identifying those, right? So figuring out, who am I and what am I naturally good at? Sometimes that's a hard question. You ask somebody, well, in an interview, people always ask you that, right? Well, what are your
Mhm.
strengths? What are your weaknesses? Or I'll just say, tell me about yourself or tell me something good about you. And people just look at you and they're like, I don't know, because we're so used to beating ourselves up about the things we think we're not good at that we don't embrace the things that we are. And so I really wanted to teach people how to identify what their strengths are and then how to develop and grow them so we can truly step into the power of who we are and the gifts and talents that we were given. And then a lot of times when you figure out what your strengths are, they align with your values and they align with your purpose. And so, for example, with my business with Psyched Up Success, I built the entire thing around those strengths. I took everything from those two career paths that I had that ran parallel for so long. I took all the things that I was the best at and the things that I loved doing and created a business out of it. And so, if you can do that in different areas of your life and not worry about the things that you're not strong in, because there's other people who are. Otherwise, the whole world would be boring. Right? And there would be a lot that didn't get done if we all had the same strengths. So instead of
Yeah.
comparing ourselves, our perceived weaknesses to other people's strengths, like let's just focus on what we're great at and step into that power and develop that so that we can feel so much better about who we are. And so that's a whole lesson in and of itself.
Yeah, no, and I agree totally. I mean, it is easier or better for us to, well, do the things that we're good at, right?
Yeah.
And then like have people help us with those other things. But as we're enabling ourselves in a sense to
Mhm.
focus in on our strengths, to, you know, run that race in a sense, right? To
Mhm.
do those things that God's called us, or however, uh,
Mhm.
as we go along, kind of like what you're saying here, we develop more things along the way. We get
Yeah.
more comfortable, like you said, with the concentric circles. We stretch
Mhm.
ourselves, right?
Yes.
And we learn, we grow, we better ourselves, we better the people around us, and that's
Mhm.
kind of what it's all about. And I would encourage everyone out there to go and get both of these journals because it will help you to be motivated, to get motivated, to learn all of those little nuances about yourself, and start maybe chipping away at some of your own defenses, right? And get out of that fear and those kinds of things. So, Jodie, I want you had in your opener, one of the things that I picked up on, because I've experienced this in the past, is
Mhm.
burnout. You
Yes.
mentioned,
Me too. Mhm.
and I think that's another thing that's important for us to cover, especially as we're learning from our lessons, or we're developing our strengths. How do we get to the point where we're not overexerting ourselves and maybe seeing some of the warning signals so we don't get burned out?
That is such a great question, Donato. Yeah, I have experienced burnout, chronic burnout myself in the past. And that is something that is really important for all of us to be aware of because it's so prevalent right now. Since 2020, those rates have just skyrocketed because there was a whole new level of stress and anxiety and challenges that were placed in our lives on top of everything else we were already dealing with. And burnout was already a problem even
Oh,
before that. And so, for me, what I had experienced is that I was really disconnected from listening to my own inner wisdom and my body and what was going on. I really do believe that we're taught in our society from a very young age to disconnect. We're told, because we go to school, we go to work, and all of those things that we're expected to do, that we're told, okay, you have to wait until this time or until the bell rings or whatever the case may be to eat or use the restroom or get a drink of water or whatever it is. And, before 2020, especially, it was very common for you to be expected to go to work, even if you were sick, to just push through. And that is one thing that I've seen drop a little bit, is that pressure to push through even when we're sick, because everyone after the pandemic started, was like, oh, you're sick, you stay home. Right. So I think that was one good thing.
Probably wouldn't have been so bad if people would have had that mentality.
Yeah, exactly. It may not have been so bad. Absolutely. And so when we don't listen to our own cues, because burnout happens mentally and emotionally and physically. And so our body will give us signs. And if we don't listen to them, they'll get bigger and they'll get bigger until it just takes you out and makes you stop and pay attention. Right. And so that's what I experienced a lot of with burnout. Was I was just used to putting so much on my plate. I was a high achiever. I was somebody who always had so many activities and so many sports when I was younger. And I was always go, go, go. And I just continued that on into college and into grad school and into my careers. I mean, you heard me talk about, I ran pretty much 2 full-time careers alongside each other for a really long time. And I was just exhausted. And what would happen is I would figure out that, okay, I need to take a break and rest and recover. And then I would just go right back to my old patterns and right back to the way I was operating before. And I remember the first time that happened for me, I've worked with all different ages, so a lot of kids and teens and adults, families. And at the time I was working with young children, and I was just stretched too thin. I was doing too much, had too much on my plate, and I was getting sick a lot. But what we do is we make excuses and we say, oh, it's just the kids. Kids are always sick, so of course I'm sick, right? Or this has happened, this is going around, so it's fine, right? If we have headaches or we are sick frequently because our immune system isn't working at its best, or we have digestive issues. And for me, that's what happened. Is I was getting sick more often. I ended up with an ulcer as well on top of all of that. And they wanted me to go back to work way too soon. I had to have a surgical procedure for that. And they were like, well, we don't have anybody else. We need you to come back. It wasn't good for me. It wasn't the right choice. And I did, and I wasn't recovering the way that I should. And so I took the time off. I actually ended up quitting that job because in order to take time off, because otherwise I wasn't going to be able to, and did recover. But I was doing all sorts of things still. I went back to another job. I had my business. I was caregiving for my mother. I was, a military wife. My husband was gone a lot. And so, there's a lot of stress with that and responsibilities. You're running 2 people's lives when that happens. And so it really was just too much. I just went right back into it. And so then, a few years passes and then something else happens and you get knocked out again. And after a few times of things like that happening where my body just wasn't recovering the way it optimally could, I realized that I needed to make some lifestyle shifts and make some changes. And so that's basically what I ended up having to do around the time I decided to start my business in the way it is now. I'd always said I wanted to have my own private practice and I wanted to be able to work from home. And luckily, technology allows me to do that. And I had to just learn how to take care of myself first, so I could take care of everybody else and everything else at my best. Because if you push yourself to the point where you can't even take care of you, you can't take care of anything else.
Yeah. And you touched on something important. Stress.
Yes. We all have it. Mm-hmm.
We do. And unfortunately, in your case, it led to an ulcer.
Yeah.
And that should be like the major warning sign, right? Hello,
It
body's not
was.
operating right. Something
Mm-hmm.
led me to this point. So kind of like I was asking for those key signs of burnout. I mean, those physical things, you know, even just the elevation in your blood pressure,
Yes, absolutely.
all,
That.
getting sick. I mean, all of those things should be those at least somewhat of a beginning warning sign that
Mm-hmm.
says, "Hello, you need to change something here. It's not working."
Yeah.
Instead of, like you also mentioned, just pushing through it, and I mean, it sounds like you're much like myself, type A personality here. That
Achievers,
is,
yes.
you're just you're just gonna push through it. You're
Mhm.
taught these things, or you're just kind of bred that way, or what's
Yeah,
in your
or
genes.
expected.
Like,
Hmm.
yeah, you got to go, 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 and we got to realize, especially us type A personalities, hey, there's a sign here. Slow down, take a breath. What's going on?
Hmm.
You know, regroup so you don't get burned out, so you don't have to end up in the hospital.
Exactly.
All of those different kinds of things. So I think stress is just such a huge thing that a lot of us think. I mean, I've said it myself. Oh, I operate better under stress. You
Uh-huh.
know, and to some degree, I kind of do, because then there's more activity, there's more things going on.
Mhm.
But you tend to burn yourself out, you get drained, and exhausted, and all those different kinds of things, and high blood pressure.
Mhm.
So I don't know if there's something else there that you can tell us to avoid, or to give us more warning signs, but
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
that's just a big thing, I think.
Yeah. Your body's cues are a big thing, and not blowing them off, not excusing them, paying attention. And so learning how to check in. So I can give you and everybody listening a tip on how to do that. And then we can definitely talk about more warning signs too. But one of the things that I think can be really supportive and helpful in learning how to connect again, learning how to pay attention to what our body signs are, is throughout the day, just not, it doesn't even take a minute. You could take, a 30-second or a 1-minute break and do a little check-in with yourself. And it just is stopping just for a moment. It's hitting the pause button. Take 3 mindful breaths, meaning just breathe and just be in your body. Do a little scan, do a little check-in with what's going on. And then answer 2 questions for yourself. And one is, how are you feeling? And so you can answer that, emotionally, but say, I am feeling whatever that is. A lot of times in our culture, we tend to say, I am depressed, I am sad, I am happy, I am mad. And that is really putting it on our identity as if it's unchanging. And so I like to switch that up and say, I am feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling relaxed, or I'm feeling content, whatever it is in that moment of how you're feeling. And then also answer, what are you noticing or experiencing in your body? So, I'm
Hmm.
experiencing some tightness in my shoulders, because we don't even stop to think about it. We just go like this all day and have our
Right.
shoulders to our ears, right? And so it's like, oh, I'm noticing that my back hurts, or I'm noticing I have a little bit of a headache, or I'm noticing that I'm hungry, or I'm thirsty. You notice these things, but a lot of times, if you're like me, then you would just work through it. You'd be like, oh, I'm hungry, but I'm busy. I'll eat later. Right. And so when you do these check ins, you notice what's going on and do 3 more breaths. See how you feel after that. You might feel a little bit better, just even having stopped and just paused for a moment and named how you were feeling. And then after that, you can just decide, what do I need in this moment? Hey, what do I need? Do I need to go eat? Do I need a drink of water? Do I need to stand up and stretch? Do I need to go walk outside for a moment and get some fresh air? Or am I good now? And I just needed to take a moment and acknowledge what was going on. Or maybe there's something you can do to shift how you're feeling. And so that's a great way to start getting used to checking in and just doing that a few times a day. You can do that once in the morning, once at lunch, once in the evening, something like that, to just condition yourself again. So recondition yourself instead of from disconnecting to connecting. And so that's a great way to look for those signs and symptoms and nip them in the bud right before they get worse and worse and worse and knock you out. Because I've worked with a lot of people who had chronic migraines that were completely stress related. There's a lot of health conditions out there that are caused just completely by stress. I've had a lot of clients who they go to the doctors and they're like, there's really nothing else we can do for you. We can't find anything. And it is because it's their body's way of trying to tell them to slow down or take a break or take care of themselves. Or if you have a health condition, it can exacerbate those symptoms. And so checking in with yourself and doing a little extra care is always good. And then there are also symptoms of burnout that aren't necessarily physical as well. We can start lacking our motivation or enthusiasm for whatever it is that we're doing. We can start feeling more apathetic or just really not seeing the results. Sometimes it's a loss of productivity. So sometimes it's that motivation that you're losing. Sometimes it's doing things and getting frustrated because you're not seeing the results that you were before. Because again, you're just not operating at that optimum level. And so you're not getting that output from what you're putting into it. And so when we start feeling like we're unable to manage our emotions and our energy, we might feel really resentful or start getting more short fused, at home or at work. Those kinds of things are also signs in addition to the physical. There's a lot of things that can come up with just us being more emotionally reactive or starting to withdraw and really just not enjoying the things that we enjoyed before when it comes to burnout.
I like that, your check-in thing.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me a little bit of like how corporate America is as far as ergonomics go. They always encourage you to get up, move around, stretch yourself, or, take your eyes and focus on somewhere different, that kind of thing, because it's much like you're saying, it just helps with productivity and other things like that. But
absolutely,
that checking in thing, hopefully people caught that. I like your thing where you say, I am feeling, right? And it's physical, it's emotional, right? We got to understand those key differences of what we are, right? There's a body, there's our soul, which is our mind, will, and emotion. And then there's the spiritual aspect, right? Yeah. We have to feed each one of those parts. So I like how you said that too, because, it's like, okay, what do I need? Do I need to get something to eat or drink or whatever else? Checking in with each part of who you are and seeing where everything is lining up. Is your head in the right space? Is your body in the right space? Are you doing the right things for your spirit to keep yourself just fully charged up? Because each of those things plays a part. We were talking so much about stress, and that stress is kind of that emotional thing, but it's affecting our physical body. So how all of those things just intertwine and line up are so important. So I thank you for those great examples, because I think if we can really adapt those and take that time out just for a minute to breathe.
Join us next time as Donato and Jodie talk more about the effects of burnout and how you can avoid it in your daily life. Thank you for listening to Get Motivated with Donato, where Donato speaks with leaders, authors, influencers, and speakers who share their life journeys with motivational tips, lessons learned, and keys of success that will motivate you to change your life. Follow Donato on Facebook and LinkedIn at Donato Parisi, or go to donatomotivates.com. Remember, you can be anything you want and desire. All you have to do is get motivated.